Well, dear colleagues, let us continue this session of our dissertation council for defense of thesis by Apollinariya S Avrutina for the degree of Doctor of Philological Sciences. Academic Specialization 10-02-19 Theory of Language on the theme Phonology and Morphonology of Agglutinative Languages in a diachronic perspective on the material of the Asia Minor's Turkic literal languages of the 13th 20th centuries. No objections? Very well. Now, some information from me. According to the order of St. Petersburg University, the 27th of January 2020, number 429/1, me, Skrelin Pavel Anatolich, Doctor of Philological Sciences, Professor of the Department of Phonetics and Foreign Language Teaching Methodology of St. Petersburg University, was appointed chairman of this dissertation council. The same order was appointed dissertation council members. Let me introduce them. According to the order, St. Petersburg University, from 23rd of March 2020, number 2304/1, our meeting is being held in the remote access mode, which includes my colleagues, members of the council, Svetlana Viktorovna Androsova, Doctor of Philological Sciences, Professor of the Department of Foreign Languages of Amur State University. Can you see? Can you hear us? Yes, absolutely. The answer is positive. Alexey Alexeyevich Burikin, Doctor of Philological Sciences, Doctor of Historical Sciences, leading researcher of the Vocabulary Department of the Institute of Linguistic Research of the Russian Academy of Sciences. Can you see us, Alexey Alexeyevich? Can you hear us? Alexey Alexeyevich, I saw you. Alexey Alexeyevich, please say something.
Алексей Алексеевич, у вас выключен микрофон. Вам нужно отжать кнопочку Unmute.
Turn the microphone on.
Это в нижнем левом углу.
Okay. Yes. Now I can see you're doing fine now. You can hear us. Let me continue. Iraida Yakunis looking at Doctor of Philological Sciences, Professor, Chief Researcher of the Institute of Philology, Siberian branch of the Russian Academy of Sciences. Can you see and hear us? Yes, I can see you. Yes, she can see us. That's very well. And our colleague, Mehmet Olmez, Doctor of Philology, Professor of Istanbul University, Turkey. Can you see and hear us? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. And I can see you very well.
Да, я вас слышу. And the degree applicant, Apollinariya Sergeyevna Avrutina. Can you see us? Can you hear us? Yes, I can. That's very well. Thank you. Also, in touch with us is the academic consultant of the degree applicant, Vadim Borisovich Kasevich, Doctor of Philology, Head of the Department of Theory and Methodology of Teaching Languages and Cultures of Asia and Africa at St. Petersburg University. Vadim Borisovich, can you see and hear us? I saw your name on the list of participants. Yes, I can hear you. Thank you, Vadim Borisovich. You can hear us. And I can also see you. Thank you, Vadim Borisovich. So all the members of the dissertation council as the degree applicant are present, and we can all see and hear each other. Our meeting is held in the remote access mode in accordance with St. Petersburg University order, and I invite all the participants to follow the procedure. If a technical failure occurs and you stop seeing or hearing someone, please let me know. I will call it technical break until such issues are eliminated. So we already ran into something similar, so hopefully that will. If the connection with me is lost, I would like to ask Androsova Svetlana Viktorovna to call technical break. Svetlana Viktorovna, do you mind? If the connection with me is lost, and in case I'm unable to participate in this session, I have no objections. Thank you. Dear members of the council, do you have any objections? Of course we don't. Very well, thank you. Let me also inform you that our meeting is being recorded and broadcast online at the university website, and the speeches are being simultaneously translated from Russian into English or from English into Russian. The applicant's page currently displays an email address to which anyone can send questions, send their opinions and questions to the applicant regarding her thesis and the ongoing scientific discussion. These questions shall be forwarded to me by the technicals in the department, and I will read them out during the discussion. Questions should be related strictly to the applicant's speech and the content of the thesis, and must include the name, position, place of work of the author of the question. Questions that are not related to the academic discussion, to the discussion of the thesis, to the text or evaluation of the thesis shall not be presented. In accordance with the internal regulations of St. Petersburg University, a session of the Dissertation Council is duly constituted if at least 2/3 of the approved members of the Council are participating, but not less than 4 persons. Our Dissertation Council consists of 5 members, and all the members are present, all in remote interactive mode. Audio-visual contact has been established with all of them. Thus we have the quorum. And I instruct the curator of today's defense, as Olga Vyacheslava, officer of the Dissertation Council Activity Support Department, to draw up the attendance list in which council members present and the applicant should be recorded and indicate their work mode, in this case remote. And let me suggest the following procedure of today's session with the approximate duration of about 3 hours, no more than 3 hours. First, the chairman's summary report on the main content of documents submitted by the applicant and their compliance with the applicable regulations, answers to possible questions, 5 minutes. A brief presentation by the degree applicant outlining the key points of her study, only the key points. Everybody present is familiar, and those watching the procedure of the session online can read the thesis, the university website. So the presentation, Apollinariya Sergeyevna, you will have a few minutes. Questions to the applicant, strictly no more than 2 minutes. Answers of the applicant, no more than 5 minutes for all questions. That shall be followed by speeches of all members of the Dissertation Council with their assessment and opinions, questions and suggestions to the degree applicant. All the reviews are available at the university website, page dedicated to this defense procedure. So please come up with ideas that occurred to you. So add something, try to add something to what you've already written in your reviews. And so those watching us online, they also have the opportunity to read the reviews, full text. So if you would like to add something, so please, you will have 10 minutes for that. That shall be followed with my speech and my review, my assessment, and I shall try to make it brief. So that shall be followed by answers of the applicant to questions and comments of members of the Dissertation Council, and we shall decide on the order if the applicant should answer all the questions at once or after each review is presented. We shall decide on that later. That shall be followed as should be, by the open discussion, speeches, questions to the applicant, not more than 5 minutes per question, and I shall also read out questions sent by email, if any. After that, I will give the floor to the applicant for the final answers to questions asked during the discussion part. And next, after that, after all these questions, the academic advisor shall take the floor approximately for 3 minutes. Discussion of the members of the dissertation council. If we need to have such a private discussion, for that time, broadcasting shall be suspended. If the council members will remain, their opinions will remain the same, we will probably not need such a discussion. And then after that, we shall proceed to the open individual voting and counting the votes. The results shall be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. And then we shall decide on awarding or not awarding the academic degree to the degree applicant and give her the floor for her closing remarks. Dear colleagues, do you have questions or objections to this procedure? No. Okay, if no one has any objections, let me start running the procedure. And please remember to switch off your mobile phones. Thank you for your understanding. For item 1 of our session, let me give the floor to the academic advisor of Apollinariya S, Avrutina, Doctor of Philological Sciences, Professor, Head of the Department of Theory and Methodology of Teaching Language and Cultures of Asia and Africa, Speciality University, Vadim Borisovich Kasevich. Please introduce the applicant to us. Welcome. Should I introduce myself? No, you should introduce Apollinariya Sergeyevna, and I have introduced you already. As was already said, we don't have much time for this introduction, but in reality, because we are discussing this work, it's not the first time we had an opportunity widely to study this work. In this work, as you know very well already, is dedicated to the Turkic languages, chronology, phonology and morphonology of the Turkic languages, and there are really few works like that. But if you take a closer look in the materials and the approach, the theory apparatus, you will see that you seldom run into such works. In reality, this leaves you with a very good impression. First of all, we believe that in some languages, and we study in so much some languages in so much detail. We have no time left for other languages. And as I have already said, should be noted that there are some works, scientific works, where you may find something that doesn't exist. As I mentioned already, for example, all knows as in German, and as it seems, such wide spaces to study it. But the paradox of the situation is in the fact that is considered separately. The segment units are considered separately. And in reality, I'm running a little bit ahead. Tightly knit as a well-tailored. I don't know how to say that in Russian. And so if we look at it within the framework of syngermanology, this in reality calls for significant consideration, because apart from works which are dedicated to traditional, so to say, languages, Durian, for example, this is a different world altogether. But if we realize that there's some irregularity here, there are not that many languages like that, languages of interest. A major issue is that the connection in general with international material, for example, apart from the material already discussed, we can see the northern languages, the Tenougaric languages, which have been in the limelight, have always been in the limelight. These are two, maybe more, neutral. They fall out of the model. Seems to be a very clear-cut case. So the apparatus should rebuild itself in a different manner. But it's not being rebuilt. One more position is added. So how do we deal with such rules? Well, this is for neutral. I will finish my speech now. Once again, the new material is considered in a different manner. It's qualitative linguistics with its full potential. The connection between these two things has been very scarcely studied, and it will help us to prove, or maybe to rediscover the issue of diachrony. At least three major our author, and even if we, I don't remember exactly, approximately 15 works considered, and even if she only presented 5 and she didn't do anything, that would be sufficient already. And thank you for your attention. Thank you, Vadim Borisovich. Now, let's follow the official procedure and the thesis by Apollinariya S, Avrutina, the degree of Doctor of Philological Sciences, academic specialization 10-02-19, theory of language, on the theme phonology and morphonology of agglutinative languages in a diachronic perspective, on the material of Asian Minors, Turkic literal languages of the 13th, 20th centuries, was accepted for defense by the order of the academic secretary of St. Petersburg University, dated the 27th of January 2020, number 428/1. The number of publications of the applicant, which set out the main scientific results of the thesis, according to the list presented, is 22, including publications in peer-reviewed scientific journals from the list approved by the Ministry of Education, Science, 16, in journals indexed in the scientific databases Web of Science and Scopus, 2 publications. The applicant submitted to the Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg University a full package of documents for acceptance of the thesis for consideration and defense, and all the documents comply with Article 12 of Section 3 of the Order. All the documents submitted by the applicant, according to the information I received from the curator, comply with the applicable regulations and are kept in the applicant's attestation file. Copies are available from the officer of the Destination Council Support Department, curator of today's session, Ekaterina Vyacheslavna Sazonova, who is currently online. Before I give the floor to the applicant, do you, dear council members, have any general questions to the applicant, including whether it's necessary to disclose and review the entire list of documents submitted by the applicant for her defense? Do you want to learn something from the documents? No one has any questions. Everything is clear. Thank you. Then let's proceed. Apollinariya Sergeyevna should be brief presentation of the main results of your research. Thank you. Dear colleagues, good afternoon. Before I start my presentation, I'd like to dedicate my presentation, my defense, in the memory of my teacher and friend, Leningrad, Moscow, Turcologist, head of the Department of Turkic Philology of the Institute of Asian and African States of Moscow State University, late Professor Dmitry Mikhailovich Nasilov, who passed away in 2016, who already in 2016 highly appreciated my current work and did a lot to make both this text and this defense happen. For many years, since I started university, I've been studying the phonological system of the modern Turkish and other Turkic languages. I've always wanted to learn what Edward Sepeyu writes about in his article. Let me quote. An essential property of all languages is not only their phoneticity, but also their phonematism, between articulation of the voice in the form of sound sequence, directly perceived as a simple feeling, and the complex structuring of this sound sequence into such symbolically significant units as words, phrases, and sentences. There are very interesting processes of phonetic selection and generalization which can easily escape attention, but which are extremely important for the development of the specifically symbolic aspect of the languages. To paraphrase this quote, I'd like to say that I have always wanted to find out how the minimum constitutive unit, a phoneme, shapes the word, and by what rules the phonemes are combined in different languages. As a Turcologist, I've spent many years studying the design of agglutinative languages. In my candidate's thesis, I reconstruct the phonological system of the ancient Turkic runic texts by using the method of phonological interpretation of the data of ancient scripts, based on the concept of autochthonous origin of the ancient Turkic runic writing, proposed by my teachers, Viktor Grigorovich Gusev and Sergei Vladimirovich Kashtorny, as well as the principles of grammatology studied in the works of world's leading specialist grammatologists Ignatius Gelb and Johannes Friedrich. For the first time in Turkic material, this ancient scripts was tested in the candidate thesis of my teacher, Professor Viktor Grigorovich Gusev, on the material of the old Anatolian Turkic language of the 13th, 15th centuries. My interest in the history of phonology of agglutinative languages made me pay attention to the history of formation of the phonological system of the modern Turkish language. I must say, there's quite a few publications in the phonetics of the modern Turkish language, and the leaders are, of course, by the Turkish scientists, many of whom conduct interesting interdisciplinary studies. The works of Mehmet Akif Kılıç, who uses X-rays to analyze the work of the articulatory apparatus, I found interesting. And as I remember, he's also an otolaryngologist, and works on phonology and morphonology of Turkic languages are fairly scarce. After many years of teaching theoretical courses and masters of Oriental Studies at Pittsburgh University, as well as several works of work in the interdisciplinary environment in the system of liberal education, led me to the idea of the need for interdisciplinary study. In the modern science, it's not uncommon for a particular branch of knowledge that have already accumulated a large number of various facts, many of which are well studied. New, unconventional research methods allow to take a new look at this material. Here, I'd like to recollect the works of the Austrian philosopher Otto Neurath, who, in the first half of the 20th century, justified the possibility of a single unified language of science, based on the language of physics and mathematics and capable of ensuring unity of scientific knowledge. With the help of such language, it will be possible to establish logical links between different branches of knowledge, develop a common methodology, formulate and analyze the basic concepts, and develop an interdisciplinary classification of sciences. Neurath himself focused on the translation of psychology and sociology into such a language. Therefore, in this work, along with the methods of classical phonology, I use the statistical mathematical apparatus of quantitative linguistics, which defines the method of my research. The quantitative linguistics is one of the newest trends in the modern linguistics, which has been around for about 20 years. An important difference of mathematical linguistics is that the mathematical linguistics treats the language as a mathematical function in its purest state, while the quantitative linguistics engage in the quantitative analysis of the phenomena which appear as a resultant function of various language subsystems, and the language itself has no quantitative nature. So far, the methods of quantitative linguistics have not been practically tested on the Turkic material. So for I only use text in the literal languages. Obviously, when it comes to medieval text, we started only literary monuments. But modern texts assume variations. For our work, I used Turkic literary monuments of different epochs created in the same area, in a little language in the cultural and or political centers of the time, which determined them belonging to the high style. It should also be emphasized that this study does not aim at interpreting the data of writing of the considered monuments as such work has already been performed for the monuments in question in the works of Turkologists in Russia and abroad. Accordingly, reliable reconstructions and transcriptions of the texts of the monument were used in my thesis. The only independent reconstruction of the author, these are the runic monuments, which, as already mentioned, taken as the conventional starting point of the research and were made as part of the candidate's thesis. And then suddenly in 2011, supplemented in 2011, my monograph was published. For the convenience of machine processing of text, all variants of transcription have been reduced to a uniform based on the modern Turkish alphabet. For each time period mentioned above, I selected text fragment or several text passages at least 4,000 words long. One of the main conclusions of my work is that the phonological structure of a Turkic word is connected with other language levels within the general language system. The general phonological model of the considered languages can be created, taken into account diachronic data on the basis of the existing models of because the information about the ancient structural types helps understand the processes of formation, development, and future features of the phonological models of modern Turkic languages. In the course of my work, I assumed that the quantitative assessment of the material would help me to demonstrate the typological homogeneity of the languages of Asia Minor. According to Swardish, the basic scale of all language changes over the time in the same way, an update of 19-20% in the millennium, and the global differences between idioms may differ, and the nature of this difference is not always clear. Nevertheless, contrary to the widespread opinion and to the opinion of the Swardish himself, the proximity of the indices of the Turkic language, the Irish of different obtained, showed us that language changes quite slowly. In literature, as suggested by Nometh, it's common to talk about the existence of two lexical layers, the Turkic layer proper and the layer of Arab-Persian borrowings, and accordingly, the phonological content of each layer is different to a certain extent. Quite often in literature, it was stated a need to investigate these layers separately. Even the author of this thesis has shared this opinion for many years. However, tables and diagrams in the dissertation show that the subsystems of vowels and consonant phonemes serve the Turkic layer of the modern Turkish proper. This system, the Phonetics, is subjected to phonological processing the Arab-Persian elements, making them Turkic. The foreign words inside which the foreign phonemes could be located obviously were strongly distorted by the native speakers of Turkic languages, because when speaking about the interaction of the sound systems, Turkic and non-Turkic, in the conditions of their coexistence, should be borne in mind that depending on the conditions of such coexistence, the result may be different. In accordance with the traditional concept of properties of phonological hearing, a native speaker of any language interprets any unfamiliar sound as familiar. That is, turns any foreign sound sequence, a sequence of phonemes in native language, the characterizing the state of this borrowed layer in the Turkish language at present would be unfair to claim that it has its own phoneme system, which is separate from the main Turkic phoneme, because many of the differential features, characteristics of Arab and Persian phonemes, are irrelevant to Arabic and Persian words in their Turkish version. And in speech, borrowed words, modern Turk pronounces the same sounds and has the same representations, according to Baden de Courtenay, both in borrowed words and the native Turkish. Nevertheless, the multilingual determines specificity of the evolution of languages in question. The significant influence of the areal and cultural neighbors determines the evolution of the multi-temporal literally Turkic languages of Asia Minor. Let me remind you that the evolution of the language in consideration is characterized by the absence of the Arab-Persian borrowings, and in our case, the language of rune monuments is conventional, accepted as such a starting point, and the final point is the complete assimilation of borrowings, in our case, the modern Turkish language. Intermediate in this case is the existence of a diasystemic situation, with the preservation of different sources within a given language of varying degree of expression. We're not talking about the unique features of history of the Turkic language. On the contrary, we may say that the result is typologically universal, whereas the path is specific. All the above allows us to draw a conclusion about the Asian Minor language union in relation to different Turkic language Asian Minor local versions of Persian and Arabic. So this union is adjacent to the Balkan one. In other words, the primary typological structure in the considered era is not the plain comparison of individual languages, but the multi-level interaction linguistics union became a powerful driver for the formation and development of the Turkic languages in Asia Minor, as a result of which, against the background of corresponding geopolitical processes, during a long history, different linguistic constellations were formed and changed. Obviously, the data presented and trends outlined require further in-depth and comprehensive investigation. However, this information provides an opportunity to cautiously suggest that the Turkic language of Asia Minor may probably show us the first signs that may lead to a change in the language system in the distant future. My study, of course, does not claim to be comprehensive, but As the author, let me express my timid hope that the understanding of phonological and morphonological processes in the modern ancient Turkic languages from the standpoint of general linguistics and quantitative linguistics will contribute to the development of general linguistics and will lead to the formation of a direction based on interdisciplinary methods of research and will contribute to the development of Turkic language. Thank you for your attention. Apollinariya Sergeyevna. Well, dear colleagues, do you have questions to the degree applicant regarding her presentation? Thank you.
Можно один вопрос,
May I ask one question
по поводу
to
доклада и диссертации?
regarding
Apollinariya
presentation?
Sergeyevna,
This is
скажите,
Apollinariya
пожалуйста,
Sergeyevna.
можно ли
Please
сказать,
tell
что
us,
учитывая то,
can one
что
say that
при применении неустоявшейся системы письма для создания текстов в них могут отражаться модификации, имевшие место в речи, вами исследуется не только классическая фонотактика, замкнутая в рамки канонического слова, но и речевая фонотактика?
But also the speech connotations. Of course, the early text of the early monuments reflect the phoneme.
Спасибо.
Yes, you're right. Thank you. Any more questions? Okay, then we shall have more time to ask questions after hearing the reviews. So let us proceed to the next item of the procedure, and we have reviews by members, and we have two external reviews, one from the candidate of physics and mathematics at St. Petersburg University, Andrei Mikhailovich Puchkov, and from Professor of Computer Linguistics at Newcastle University, Herman Moisel. So, since all these reviews have been published at the university website, anyone interested may read them there. So I will not read them all. I will just focus on some questions or remarks or comments, maybe points for discussion mentioned in these reviews. The candidate of physics and mathematics, Andrei Mikhailovich Puchkov, has a very good opinion of the thesis, but he made a number of comments. And according to the author, which are not really of critical nature, for example, he suggested a numbering, a font size method of representation and visual representation. And so I think Apollinariya Sergeyevna will answer this comment. And Professor of Computer Linguistics of Newcastle University also comments on the high level of the work performed, says that it meets all the applicable regulations and the degree applicant deserves to be awarded the degree, just like the other reviewer. But his questions, points, one of his comments is obviously technical, they must repeat provisions given in the beginning, later in the text. And the second comment on including more works by international linguists in the list of literature. The next one relates to and future research and methods of statistical analysis. And also we received messages from Mr. Dekova, which I have read, and I think that the claims are purely procedural, and not the results of the study which we're discussing here. And as for the the work is interdisciplinary, and Specialty 10.02.902, 10.02, 21st Specialty Mathematical, or Specialty 20 Comparative Linguistics, and of course 19 Theory of the Language, which has a special section on phonetics, phonology. So, in my opinion, it's very natural to review, for this thesis to be reviewed as by experts in the language theory. Each of you can express your opinion, and claims made by Arzu Akhmedovna got answered. Now let's proceed to the reviews submitted by the council members. First, let's give the floor to Svetlana Viktorovna. Would you like to add something significant to your review, or so you have every opportunity for this? Thank you very much, dear colleagues. I think in my review I expressed my opinions. I have nothing new to add. Though we don't have any additional questions, here I have to ask the degree applicant, how do you want to do it? Do you want to answer each reviewer separately, or do you want to, if maybe there are some points for discussion, or you'd like to hear all the reviews and then answer them all together? And any questions asked by the other reviews, which I have already mentioned? So what is your opinion? Do we want to answer each review? Pavel Anatolyevich, I'd like to answer each reviewer. Okay, now you have the opportunity to answer the review questions, the comments, questions already asked. Dear Svetlana Viktorovna, first of all, let me thank you for studying my thesis in such detail and for giving such a high opinion, especially of the English version. Your opinion is very important for me, and I studied your remarks carefully. Let me answer your questions. Let me answer the first question. Which I'd like to mention the definitions which I had here, not only this work. Here, the interpretation which according to which language exists in the consciousness of all members of a given linguistic community. This definition by Trubetskoy as knowledge specialized, responsible for communication. So I see a language as a system of images, knowledge. This is adapted for communication. In other words, a language is the language-centered area of thinking. A language is also a natural communicative system, each unit of which represents an image or a combination of images and is either one-sided or phoneme or two-sided, is grapheme, meme, and its varieties, or represents a model of a syntactic construction. A language is a language system that consists of several subsystems, each of which is responsible for this. Phonological, morphological, syntactic, lexical. As for speech, I believe in the following definition: speech is like a sign or a chain of signs introduced into the act of communication, representing some thought content, information, or meaning. Speech is a process of using the language, the process of language realization and realization of thinking and consciousness. As for definition of phonology and phonetics, there are many definitions of these concepts in literature, but here I also believe in the definition given by Trubetskoy. According to Trubetskoy, phonology is a study of sounds of the language, or in the other words, about the fact that it's a part of sound functioning, and phonetics, a doctrine about the sounds of speech. Bodin de Courtenay expressed the idea, which was later repeated by many foreign and Russian scientists, such as Vladimir Kasevich, that a phonological system exists as a relatively independent system of language phoneme. And the concept of phonetics in the modern science, as a rule, refers to the science of sound realization, of human speech, of physiology of sounds of human speech. And this is the definition used by the author of the study. I absolutely agree with the comment of a Polish linguist about the research of Mehmet Kilic is purely phonetic, and as I mentioned already, he's an ENT doctor, so he looks at the work of the articulatory machine through the eyes of the doctor. Let me answer your second question. And now I think that in my work, some texts are missing, which should be added, and in the future, I plan to turn my thesis into monographs. I'm going to add some literary monuments of the 15th century, so from the different regions of Turkey, as the western and central regions of Turkey, for example. Your third comment concerns choice of symbols. Yes, I absolutely agree. Symbols should be replaced, and I use them because of technical problems related to text recognition and putting the text through particular software. Your fourth question, I think I have already answered, and of course I share the opinion expressed by Trubetskoy. And as a good evidence of that is from the history of grammar, experience, observation of children, and writing of illiterate people, we know that a man who is not familiar with phonology reflects phonemes of his language as sound representations stored in his consciousness of a native speaker. Also, a good example is the creation of the young Turkish writing, new Turkish writing system in 1928. Because the creators of this new writing system reflected phonemic composition of the language. Because when the phonemic system and spelling is not in question. In 1929, the fathers of the Turkish alphabet followed the laws of phonology and created an alphabet with 29 phonemes, 21 consonants and vowel phonemes, soft g, which is mentioned by Dmitriev, and is only included in the alphabet as a technical sign. As for your fifth comment, I'd like to say the following. As mentioned on page 89, taken interpretation of the phoneme as a language unit representing an abstraction, an image, and this image corresponds to a specific class of functionally equivalent backgrounds. By backgrounds, we mean a sound segment and implementation of a phoneme. Moreover, if the background is the allophone is one of the many backgrounds of a given phoneme, or the context realization of the phoneme. Let's proceed to your sixth comment. Answering this question, let me say that experiments are moving the phoneme here in the table made under Victor after for that period, in which the old Anatolian Turkic material we are talking about 1962, 1966, and Victor Maxim, as Colin said, you won't find a single scientist who knows what phonology is. By the way, Haladovich, who translated the basis of phonology, Trubetskoy, could get confused themselves. So I have not checked the translation. So here I have to say this was an issue of the time. And so these properties are quite similar. So we phonetically analyze the units. These are words, of course. It should also be mentioned that reviewing the thesis by Gusev, Andrei Kononov didn't pay attention to this difference. So I have a candidate's thesis. Trubetskoy Nikolai Sergeyevich, phoneme here. And of course, according to Sherpa's chart, this phoneme. Let me proceed to the 7th comment. Over 1% frequently used includes 1% and more. So I agree with the comment in principle. Speaking of novelty, and putting the chart as technical, because I had to follow the technical requirements. And of course, in my monograph, I will put the tables and graphs. As for the style comments and all kinds of technical, I will thank you so much for these comments, and thank you. Let me also thank for the high opinion. I sent the English text to the International Association of Quantitative Linguistics. I got an external review of quantitative linguistics, and I got an offer to publish this text in the West. So I will continue working on the English text. Thank you very much. Thank you, Apollinariya Sergeyevna. Svetlana Viktorovna, are you satisfied, or would you like to continue the discussion? I'm fully satisfied with the answers. Thank you. Alexei Alexeyevich, would you like to add something to your review? No, I have to read. Do you want to read your review? It's up to you, because your review is available at the university website, and anyone interested had an opportunity to read it. And Apollinariya Sergeyevna is ready to answer questions you already. So I think this is a very important work, a historical composition of the Turkic languages. And well, they are writing systems, because we've never set ourselves that task, like how many languages has each manuscript includes. So now we start to understand that the Turkic languages left rich heritage and up to 30 languages now extinct. So this is very well. Now Apollinariya Sergeyevna was preparing to answer your questions. Yes, I see, but I'd like to start with the advantages and the potential of this thesis. As for the history of the Turkic languages, as an interesting experience, it seems that long vowels occur much more often. So what could be the reason for that? Disappearance of consonants. So this hypothesis can easily explain So these results can be obtained on the Turkic material. Some issues, and the Chinese, was exactly the same as the Turkic indicator. So it was also observed in the other languages. So thus, the results obtained by the author are very interesting. As for the critical comments, so here, the very concept of agglutination should be reviewed before the understand definition of agglutinative languages. So here you may classical Latin or modern Spanish, where the borders between morphemes are very easily, can be seen very easily. So in my opinion, the definition is homogeneity, the use of name within verbal word formation. But these results have been obtained through reviewing the thesis by Apollinariya S. So most of my comments I included in my review. The impression of this work is very positive, and the author, maybe the only comment, the author mentions Bogoroditsky and not his brilliant introduction into the Tatar linguistics is not mentioned by the author. I didn't find any mention of the work of Sergei Nikolaevich Ivanov, which in my opinion is a very important work. Few mention of works by Kormushin, term frequently, but a book by Serebrennikov, which is essential for this concept, is not mentioned. But these comments, and if Apollinariya Sergeyevna plans to publish a monograph, so these mistakes can be easily corrected. And in my opinion, the thesis corresponds to all the applicable requirements, and Apollinariya Sergeyevna Avrutina deserves to be awarded the degree of Doctor of Philology. Thank you, Alexey Alexeyevich. Apollinariya Sergeyevna, will you please answer? Thank you very much, Alexey Alexeyevich, for your giving this such positive opinion. And I was myself scared of how unconventional my work is. So let's proceed to your remarks. I absolutely agree with the remark about morphology. I agree that the remark about morphology, analysis of linear structure over the word, would allow us to increase the number of lexical correspondences between different languages, and also to substantiate the phonological changes through morphology. I wanted to include this subsystem in my analysis, but it became clear that there would be too much material. It would go beyond the scope of the thesis. So I will definitely include this material in my monograph, which I plan to publish in the near future, about the works of Tambovtsev, Zolkarev, and Sherbak, as I mentioned in my thesis, solely for the sake of completeness. Third remark, I'd like to say that I've heard Marism, and here, as someone born in 1979. I don't share Melnikov's ideas, of course, can fascinate young scientists, but you're absolutely right. The anthropological and ethnographic data do not always confirm them. So I can only but accept. I like your comment about the style of the text. The style of the text, of course, affects some indicators. Nevertheless, should also take into account the fact of literary value. Sometimes they quite rightly point out the use of an element may be a consequence of a natural system, but only a part of the author's plan. And then the data will be incorrect. So here, as an example, you may look at the so-called prose or poetry, which was popular in the 7th and 18th century, when authors pursued external beauty at the of internal beauty. Arabic writing, forms and figures, and here, of course, the meaning is lost. So if we look at such a text, because the obtained data will be incorrect. The fifth comment on concerning the criteria, indeed, it's a fact that the Tatar and Bashkir are zero deviations. Yet I actually planted this list of 27 words. Look at word 9 here. Monda, Birde is Binda in Bashkir. Word 24, 3H or S. 32, small, in Tatar Kichkene Keche, and in Bashkir Balake Kese. Word 54, fruit is Jimesh or Emesh. And word 98, distant, Erak or Alis Uyarak in Bashkir. Officially, Tatar and Bashkir are different languages for political reasons. The southeastern dialect of Bashkir language, if I'm not mistaken, is Kuvakan. It's called Kuvakan, which is close to Kazakh language. Now it became the official language, and so it shows some minor differences. But in fact, we're talking about almost the same language. Tatars and Bashkirs are able to understand each other. I especially ask them about if make a list of modern Turkish and the new Ottoman language spoken in the end of the 90s, there'll be even fewer differences, or maybe no differences at all. And here we know that in reality we are looking at one language. There's a dialogue, one talking, but the language of the end of the 19th. So they would be able to understand each other, but maybe they may run into some issues. Such issues happen when people of different generations, people born in, so have issues. There's one more issue. Reading in the language of the end of the 20th century it will be challenging. So the text needs adaptation because of unusual forms and words. In both cases, in order to establish the minor differences, is necessary to find the adequate statistical tools. So we measured the distances with the help of other instruments. And as for your sixth comment, page 179 as well as chapter 3, I fully accept it. In the first case, there was a technical aura, and the second case, requirements for the volume of the thesis. So all the technical, stylistic, and terminal remarks, the remarks on the list of cited literature, are fully accepted. Thank you very much for your attention. to my work. Thank you, Apollinariya Sergeyevna. Thank you, Alexey Alexeyevich. Are you satisfied? The work is a tough one, and for someone involved in the structure of Turkic morphemes, they have to take into account the results of this work. My eyes widened when I saw this turned in the Turkish languages, the transformations in the Turkic languages, all the borders, all the obviously, this is the new reality of studying the mother Turkic language. Thank you, Alexey Alexeyevich. Now let me give the floor to Iraida Yakovlevna. Iraida Yakovlevna, can you hear us? Would you like to add something to your review, or shall we just hear? Dear Pavel Anatolievich, I think there's no need to read my review, which contains the high opinion of the thesis by Apollinariya Sergeyevna. I have some minor considerations and some minor comments about the discussion initiated by Professor Sadikova, but we can discuss these later. So now let us hear the answers by Apollinariya Sergeyevna. Will you please answer questions asked by Iraida Yakovlevna? Thank you very much for giving such a high opinion and for taking part. And I would like to thank you for supporting my and of course the traditional approach, the interdisciplinary approach to analysis of the Turkic languages can make a significant contribution to, as I have already mentioned in my introduction, it was important for me the separation of language and speech. The language includes several subsystems which is responsible for one or another aspect of its activity. It's phonological, morphological. Such differentiation has an impact on the entire conceptual and technological apparatus, especially in the context of study of medieval manuscripts, as they proceed from the proceeding of Trubetskoy, first expressed in the Second International Congress of Linguists, according to which a person who is not familiar with phonology spontaneously reflects phonemes in writing. A new writing system, Anatolian Turkic and the early Ottoman language, also reflects the phonemes when writing. So we are not talking about spelling here, because spelling, according to Trubetskoy, presupposes conscious participation of a person in the process. I already gave an example of creation of the modern Turkish alphabet in 1928. Let me repeat myself. Its creators, not knowing, they reflected the 29 phonemes. So the comment about research of phonemization, I accept. A couple of words on the other comments. First, the question on quoting Vadim Borisovich. I use the electronic PDF version, and I especially checked in my version on pages 4-5, the section Elements of Phonology. First of all, we proceed from the existence of a relatively autonomous system of phonemes. As for the term phonology, to denote a language subsystem, the consequence of the systems study them, and the meaning of the corresponding language subsystems. Your second remark, I fully accept. Next, third comment, the use of terms front and back is traditional for Leningrad and Petersburg School of Psychology, and if I'm not mistaken, it's also used by Moscow psychologists, at least at the Institute of Asian African country states of Moscow University. Nevertheless, the terms of it by use seem to be more precise in the sense of morphology. In response to comment number 4, let me explain that here I differentiate consonant combinations I haven't identified in the text and mention quotation from the grammar of the language of only spur and assonant can be in the consonant combination. In other words, a significant terminological clarification is needed here, and thank you very much for pointing that to me. This is a 5th comment. Here, of course, this is, of course, a technical error that will be corrected. The remark is accepted. Thank you very much. Thank you, Apollinariya Sergeyevna. Irina Yakovlevna, are you satisfied with clarifications? Yes, Pavel Anatolich, I am satisfied. Thank you. Now, let's give the floor to our colleague, Mehmet Olmez. I saw him just a minute ago. Would you like to add something to your review? So do you want to read, or shall we proceed straight to the answers of Apollinariya Sergeyevna?
It is not unnecessary to read again my review.
Нет, мне не обязательно читать снова мой отзыв.
Yeah, but I have some words,
Но
additional
у
words.
меня есть несколько дополнительных замечаний.
That is good. There was just vowels in Turkic languages.
Касается числа гласных в турецком языке. Замечание касается.
Study. There is 9 vowels. That means some former or older tradition at Russian Turkology about phonetic began to change. And she is right. There is 9 vowels in historical Turkic languages. But in Kazakh more closer to Nogay and Kyrgyz. Even Kyrgyz belongs to another group. But the word from lexical side, alus, instead of Iraq, it shows that Kazakh is more closer to Mongolian. Yeah, because alus comes from alus, that means far, comes from Mongolian, and Shortly, I can summarize my new comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. Apollinariya Sergeyevna, отвечая на сначала их сформулируйте по-русски.
First, ask the questions in Russian. Could you please repeat them in Russian? Because maybe not everybody could hear the translation. I wanted to answer in English, so let me proceed and
Там не всегда было разборчиво то, что звучало в переводе. А дальше можете читать по-английски ваши ответы. Мне не важно. Как коллеги, как вы не против? Потому что переводчик будет переводить в пространство на русский язык, а мы, наверное, надеюсь, и так поймем, о чем это.
Тогда кратко изложу, наверное, вопросы господина Эрмеза. Первый вопрос касается цитаты.
So the first question was about a quote from a monograph, a colleague, about the periods of the old Turkic languages. The second question was about the description. The third question was about the origin of the runic alphabet and its connection, the system. Next comes a number of technical comments, and the comments, but including a manuscript in my work, and the final comment was about the 9 vowels. So those, and finally, a comment about the borrowed words in the Turkic languages of Asia Minor. Let me proceed, and shall I switch to the English channel, or shall I answer in English?
So, dear colleague,
Дорогие коллеги,
first, thank you very much.
Дорогой коллега, во-первых, большое спасибо.
Thank you very much for
Большое спасибо
and careful reading for my
за внимательное прочтение моей диссертации.
The first remark regarding
Первое замечание, касающееся
the dating of ancient Turkic language,
датировки древних источников and хронология. Мне очень для меня было очень убедительно, что касается имени. Этот ваш комментарий принимается. Что касается третьего замечания, следующее замечание относительно происхождения древнетюркского рунического письма.
St. Petersburg Turkologists Professor Viktor Guziv and Professor Sergei Klashtorny created and substantiated the concept of autochthonous origin of the ancient Turkic runiform script. Autochthonous origin was discussed in specialized literature before, but it was Guziv and Klashtorny who wrote a series of articles that presented clear and systematic evidence of the origin of the Turkic runic writing system. Part of the runic science, as we know, are picturesque. As far as I remember, regarding a certain part of the runic characters, the authors of the concept draw possible hypothetical parallels with Turkic tongues. For this work, Professor Guziv was admitted to the honorary members of the Turkish Linguistic Society and also received a state award from the hands of the President of Turkey. The fourth remark, a note on the phoneme V. You're absolutely right that later this phoneme became one of the consonants of the Turkish language. But on this page, I write about its absence in the language of the ancient Turkic
runic monuments, which can be confirmed by the absence of a sign for it in the runic writing system and allows us to make assumptions that it didn't exist at that period. The fifth note, thanks for the comment about danışmentname. In the future, I plan to include these texts, which I have in the original, photos of the original, in my calculations and make another point on the graph. I also agree with the sixth remark regarding the phoneme ng. A very valuable observation, number 7, regarding the ninth vowel, narrow a. This is a very important issue. I write about this problem in my article on natural phonology in Russian Turkic linguistics. The creators of young Turkish alphabet, as I've already mentioned it today, reflected 29 phonemes. The creation of this Latinized Turkic alphabet is a striking example of the spontaneous, but not realized by experts, manifestations of the phonological and morphonological systems of the Turkic language. I should repeat that this thesis was first expressed in a report of Trubetskoy at the Second International Congress of Linguists. The presence of this phoneme in modern dialects, of course, especially in the Balkans, in western part of Turkey, is requires further detailed study concerned modern Turkic language, and I think it should be a separate study, definitely separate study, study which accepts information which includes information of modern dialects. Thank you very much for your attention to my work.
Professor Olmez, are you satisfied with the Professor Olmez?
No, it's okay.
Нет, все в порядке. Большое спасибо. Then let me proceed to my review, and as I proceed, I think that all my questions can be found as I have studied reviews by other members. I started to believe even stronger, in my opinion, that the thesis by Apollinariya S has been performed on a very high technical level, and Apollinariya S deserves to be awarded the degree, and my comments are really very minor, and they are points for discussion rather than criticism. Thank you very much, Pavel Anatolyevich. Let me answer your comments. Thank you for reviewing my thesis. I absolutely agree with the request to unify the terms and transcription, and I will certainly do that in the future. The use of the terms common in St. Petersburg Turkology, this terminology used. I grew up with this terminology. Unification of transcription certainly is needed, and there's a tradition of transcribing text with symbols which coincide with symbols approved by the International Association. Since the Turkic alphabet is phonemic system, it has a minimum deviations. There's a tradition in the Turkic literature to give examples of writing the Turkish text with translation without any transcription at all. So in my text, there was a technical need, the technical need for recognition of various texts. As for your second comment, regarding voiced consonants, the talk about so-called harmony of and mid and back consonants as affixes, as phonemic, including sonants such as M and N, or being voiced or voiceless. And there's also vowels can also impact quality of consonants and have an immediate impact on articulation of the preceding consonant, the neighboring of consonant. The comment, I fully agree with your third comment. In the Turkic languages, the juxtaposition of strong and weak is the representation of an opposition for being voiced, voiceless. Strong consonants are voiceless, and weak consonants are voiced. Yet maybe it will be better to describe this as interdependence or mixed attributes. For example, dissimilating consonant combinations in the modern Turkish language, such as alt and they no longer represent dissimilation by voicelessness. When sonant is opposed to voiceless, fricative, maybe got weakened under the influence and assimilation by the weakness principle occurred. Maybe in the ancient Uyghur language, similar positions could have existed. And so this suggestion was made. The fourth comment is inaccurate transcription. Phoneme je indeed is foreign. So this is borrowed from the Persian and French languages, and phoneme e. This is the traditional Turkic mid-sonant. Thank you. I'm fully satisfied with your answers. Thank you. And now I would like you to answer comments. Comments sent by Professor Moisel and Andrei Mikhailovich Puchkov. I would like to answer the review by Andrei Mikhailovich Puchkov. And first of all, I'd like to thank Andrei Mikhailovich for his review. For me, it's very important for representative accurate sciences because I used the methods at my own risk. That was my own idea. And the mathematical part of my thesis, I think, enriches the interdisciplinary nature of my thesis. And let me answer the critical comments. First of all, thank you very much for the comment with numerical axis. The graph of Canberra, graph number 7. The purpose of my study was to measure the exact, in my case, this distance has no value as relation to the basic text. I agree that I could have included some measuring system. As for the technical comments 2 and 3, I fully agree. And as for the comment 4, I'd like to say the following. This issue in my thesis, when in criticism of Yuri Tabov's methodology, who uses the statistical distant proximity differences between languages. So I criticized Amovtsev from the point that different languages in diachrony are not independent system, and the differences between them do not result from random processes. So the terms listed by Andrei Mikhailovich and the measurement of the languages and which change gradually. So the changes are not random, and that is why in my work I use not the instruments mentioned by you, but instruments which are more appropriate for analysis of the morphological indexes and metrics, which I mentioned in my work. And thank you very much again for your attention. And now the review sent by Professor Moisel.
I will speak English once again. The review of Professor Moisel is especially important for me since Professor Moisel is at the same time as Vice President of
который был президентом Ассоциации квантитативной лингвистики. Для меня это было я очень нервничала, отправляя свою работу Ассоциации квантитативной, потому что если часть, касающаяся тюркских языков моей диссертации, мне была хорошо знакома, но для меня было совершенно новым, как отнесутся ученое сообщество к части, которая касается, я прочитала полностью, полное собрание, полностью мою статью, и это было исключение, и это было хорошее начало. Я хотела бы ответить на ваши комментарии. Я согласна с вашим первым комментарием. Я согласна с тем, что вводную часть следует...
If I decide to publish the work in as for response for the second review, I should say that if I decide to publish my work in Europe, the literature review and citation also need to be substantially modified, but not only in the field of quantitative linguistics, but also in the study of Turkic phonology. In principle, I can say that I'm already compiling a list of such literature. So I also gratefully accept this remark. As for the third remark, thank you very much for the idea of cluster analysis. I think that I will certainly add it. It will be interesting to think about a scheme for grouping objects in Turkic languages of different periods. Thank you very much once again.
Спасибо, Apollinariya Sergeyevna.
Thank you, Apollinariya Sergeyevna.
Авторы рецензий будут удовлетворены вашими разъяснениями. Итак, переходим к следующему этапу. У нас...
Let us proceed to the next point. Up to this moment, we have not received any questions via email. So you have answered all the questions and remarks. All the members of the Decision Council are satisfied with your answers. So now it would be good to have some discussion. So maybe somebody else would like to add something, speak about the thesis, because the introductory remarks. Or maybe Irina Yakovlevna would like to say something. So who would like to add something to what we have heard and discussed already? So while you are thinking, let me start with my opinion. For me, this thesis which I have read in the discussion, which I have heard. So I have to say that this study made me take a new look at quantitative linguistics, what I have read before and discussed with mathematicians, experimental phonetics. It seemed to me to be too abstract and useless. Here I could see from the thesis and from this discussion that all the suggestions are verified by qualitative assessments, which is not easy. So sometimes it's interesting to see the mathematical regularities. I don't know why we have them, but in this thesis there was a hypothesis, and then it got proved or evidenced, substantiated, and so we can see that it describes actual processes. And speaking of the results of analysis, you may see that they get this interesting linguistic interpretation. And I work more with probability methods. So to me, the features that we are studying, they can be expressed statistically, and how we extract them, how we assess them, determines credibility and the prospects for similar phenomena in our speech, in reality. So would someone else want to say something? Alexey Alexeyevich. The thesis by Apollinariya Sergeyevna indeed is a new word in many disciplines. We all know that in 1960s, Turkic study, there was a revolution in the Turkic studies, experimental phonetical studies of the majority of Turkic languages. The Turkish phonetics was published before, and also setting the question of differentiation of written or Turkic literature, something that makes the work of Apollinariya Sergeyevna so new. Before, or ancient Turkic vocabulary appeared, a chronological differentiation of the monuments. So this work demonstrates the potential that Turkology has for the theory of language studies and how the ideas are being implemented. So this is very, of course, the fact that it represents St. Petersburg School of the Turkic studies should also be mentioned. Thank you, Alexey Alexeyevich. Do we have more comments? If no one has more comments, then Apollinariya Sergeyevna, do you have any comments? I don't have any comments except for my sincere gratitude. These are not my closing remarks, right? Thank you for the interesting discussion. Let me be honest. Every review is important for me because after you've worked on an issue for many years, so you your views loses sharpness. So Sintra is very priceless opportunity to take a fresh look at the work through the eyes of the colleagues, members of the Dissertation Council. And of course, jumping ahead, I will ask each of you, when I start working on my monograph, after some time, I will ask each of you for your comments and scientific editing or maybe reviewing my monograph. So I hope you will not be bothered if I ask you. No, with Vadim Borisovich, as the academic advisor, now you have the opportunity to speak once again, to sum it up after you've heard everything said by the colleagues. So thank you. So there's no smallest hope that it's hard to sum it up really, and I'd like to compensate make up for saying too much in the beginning, and to make up for it, for what we have discussed in the form of several provisions. Namely, imagine that it's a global task. You have a global task to describe the phonetic structure of a language, and you have to use to the maximum everything connected with synharmonism. And in principle, with certain, so that's not very, it seems to be a fairly easy task. These are quite uniform languages with logical structure, and which can be traced in grammar, phonetics. So that's what we have in this sphere of languages. The most traditional, most conventional clarification of synharmonism. So what do we see here in this sense? Synharmonism, syllable synharmonism. Very little has been said about that, which is good. I mean, it's good that little has been said about that. So, in my opinion, this requires that we make more effort to prove this is not the same when we talk about synharmonism. So the picture that we get next, synharmonism, is what. So this is quite well described in literature. Is in literature or in languages. So we have quite a lot of that. And one more sphere where you get very clear picture is intonation. Intonation is quite poorly studied, in synharmonic languages, and at the same time, while if it is represented the form of something, it's possible to with the use of synharmonic. So I don't know any, I'm not familiar with any works where this task has been addressed so well. So, in my opinion, the synharmonic languages, they are rich and poor at the same time, and that is normal. This is normal when a child studies such language, learns such language, the symmetrical, the logic of these languages very quickly enables the child to start using long and complex sentences and grammar structures. So this, of course not. No, of course not. And all the talks about this require major reservations. Here, the reservation is, though the basic structure is very simple, inverted commas, of course it's got issues. That doesn't mean there's nothing else here which could be very complex, very subtle, very hard to interpret. So once again, so the language will have its own. And here there's a contribution, internal patterns in present in any language, which make an impression that there are difficult or hard, easy. So this should be packed. It's necessary to figure out the sensitive point, where the sensitive points are, and where indeed, and what's actually easy. What are the easy things? But that's not interesting. So if we look at grammars and phonetics, in the end, we should be able to see that they all look similar. So so what? How interesting is that? Note, please, in Hornby's grammar, even numerically and qualitatively, structures in all every language has more or less the same set of syntactical structures which are quite similar to one another. The interesting part comes next, and they give us the picture for the sake of which we spend our life. Thank you, Vadim Borisovich. As the academic advisor, so you presented an interesting perspective to us. So what do you think? Does Apollinariya Sergeyevna did she comply with all your requests, all your, has she fulfilled? Well, yeah, she has still has a lot more to do. So but she should be happy about that. Does that mean that at least at this stage this phase, she's done everything she had to, and not of the task of her life, but of this phase? Of course, she accomplished, but it really depends on how you formulate the task. So I think she can set herself one task. Okay, so the task is quite worth. The task was quite worth doing. Okay, let us proceed to the final part. Our session was broadcast online, and anyone interested could send us questions via email, but we have not received any questions. So obviously all the questions asked by the members of the Dissertation Council and answers to these questions given by Apollinariya Sergeyevna were quite exhaustive, and so this all the opponents, all the reviewers got all their questions answered. So that we shall finish our discussion now. And now I have a question for the members. Since we're working in the remote access mode, do you, council members, do you have more questions? I mean, and the applicant, of course, herself, do you have any other unanswered question?
For me?
Connected with this remote access mode, did everyone have an opportunity to speak? Was everyone? Is everybody satisfied? Yes, we don't have any. Yes. Okay, then before we proceed to voting, we can take a technical break, stop online broadcasting, and if we still have the same opinion, then we can proceed straight to voting. So what do you think? Do we need time for some private discussion or not?
No, I don't
we
think.
we don't need time for private discussion. Okay, then let us vote. Let's vote. So I put the question of awarding to Apollinariya Sergeyevna Avrutina the academic degree of Doctor of Philological Sciences, academic specialization 10-02-19, Theory of Language, to the open individual vote. Let me remind you that a decision of the Dissertation Council shall be considered positive if more than a half, but not less than 3 members of the Council voted for it in accordance with Article 23 of the Order. So what's your opinion? Does the applicant deserve the degree of Doctor of Philological Sciences? Apollinariya Sergeyevna Avrutina? Svetlana Viktorovna, definitely she deserves. Alexey Alexeyevich, what is your opinion? Yes, she definitely deserves the degree. Thank you. Iraida Yakovlevna?
Ираида Яковлевна, вам нужно включить микрофон.
Please switch the microphone. Turn the microphone on. Definitely deserves. Definitely yes. Thank you. Thank you. And Dr. Olmez, what do you think?
Yes, definitely deserves. Yeah.
Да, однозначно. And my opinion is also positive. I think the applicant deserves to be awarded the degree. So out of 5 members of council members present, taken part in the session, 5 voted for, voted against 0, and no one abstained. So the decision to award to Apollinariya S Avrutina degree of Doctor of Philological Sciences in Scientific Specialty 10.02.19 Theory of Language has been made. Dear colleagues, since our meeting was held in the remote access mode, do the council members or the applicant and others present have any questions, comments regarding the procedure of the meeting?
Нет.
No, we don't. That's very good, thank you. No comments. Now, Apollinariya Sergeyevna, you have a few minutes for your closing remarks. And after that, we shall congratulate you. So let us first congratulate you, or maybe we start by, dear, on behalf of all the members of the Dissertation Council, I congratulate you on this remarkable occasion. So please say something. Once again, dear colleagues, I am very grateful to all of you for today's discussion, for today's session, for your comments, and especially for the critical remarks and comments. Critical remarks are valuable to any researcher, any young scientist as myself, and the dialectical contradictions. And indeed, any language has simultaneously contradictory properties. I teach philosophy of the language, so I'm quite philosophy-oriented. Language is both stability and historical variability, is social condition regularity, and the possibility of deviation from the norm in the speech of individual, which ensures historical development, is a system organization of language unit components and the probability of uncertainty of their choice. The variability of the system and subsystems as a whole, while observing isomorphism principle, both native speakers regulate the language as well as language regulates native speakers. As Vadim Borisovich Kasevich writes, the language and speech are correlated as static and dynamic. In this sense, the language is constant, unchangeable, it rests in eternity in its limit. When the mechanism of language is activated, the system changes in time, functioning according to the corresponding rules. A functioning system is straightforward to consistency, given it time coordinates, inevitably leads to transformations according to the known innovation acceptance. In this context, my research is not finished yet. In a few years, it will be possible to measure the distance between the Turkish language of the 20th and the 21st centuries and make certain conclusions. I strongly believe in the necessity and importance of interdisciplinary research in the 21st century because the interdisciplinary research provides new perspective on certain baggage of language accumulated by many branches of science. Such research is a matter of the business of the future. In the meantime, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to all those who read my work and supported my ideas. I'd like to thank members of the Decision Council and you, Phonology, for their attentive attitude to my work. Alexei Alexeyevich, Rida Yakovlevna, Svetlana Viktorovna, and of course, Dr. Almas, for attention to my work and for this discussion. I am very grateful to my foreign colleagues sent their feedback. I'd like to thank the leaders of St. Petersburg University in person of Rector, Professor Kropotchev, who's present at today's session, for the opportunity to defend my thesis by the rules of St. Petersburg University. This is a unique opportunity. Many thanks to the colleagues of St. Petersburg University for a new format. And I thank my colleagues of St. Petersburg University for organizing this academic secretary of St. Petersburg University, Alexander Valentinovich Gniotov, the staff of Faculty of Philology, and a person of Kazakov, and the officers. Sincere gratitude for patience, understanding, and support. to my academic advisor, professor of Department of Theory of Language Africa and Asia, St. Petersburg University, Vadim Borisovich Kasevich. And many thanks to my teacher, Professor Turkic Viktor Grigorьевич Guzev. Many thanks for invaluable experience to my colleagues from the Department of Turkic Philology, St. Petersburg University, and of course, big thanks to my family. Without their support and faith, nothing would have happened. Thank you very much. Thank you. I also thank everyone for taking part. Thank you, Apollinariya S. I also thank technical officers who for this session, for making this session, arranging this session, and our curator. I declare this session closed. Thank you, everybody. So please stop the online broadcasting. Thank you.